Golden Spiral Media presents The Blacklist Exposed.
Hello, special agents. You have come to the right place. Welcome to The Blacklist Exposed. I am Agent Troy Heinrichs. We are here with a special edition of The Blacklist Exposed with our Season 1 special archive episodes. The following episode appeared on the TV Talk Network for Season 1 of The Blacklist, and we're bringing it to you here on The Blacklist Exposed, remastered and used with permission from TV Talk. We hope you sit back, relax, and enjoy this special episode from Season 1.
You're tuned in to TV Talk, The Blacklist. Welcome to TV Talk, America's #1 TV talk show network. And now it's time for TV Talk, The Blacklist.
The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air wasn't too far off when he said, "Parents just don't understand," because it's really hard to do that when your mom's in a coma. Welcome to TV Talk, The Blacklist. I'm Troy.
And I'm Dave, here to discuss number 64 on The Blacklist, The Cyprus Agency, airing January 27th, 2014.
Big shout out to all the listeners tuning in via iHeartRadio today. Glad to have you with us.
You can also find the show via Stitcher, iTunes, and as always, the free TV Talk app for iOS and Android.
Before we get into tonight's episode, I wanted to start out by sharing a crazy theory I've been kind of following over the past few weeks. I mean, we started the season, Dave, a little bit with kind of this Red might have like a Scooby-Doo mask reveal, and I really didn't put this together until a friend of ours, Matthew Anderson from the Blacklist Facebook group, actually kind of put the pieces together for me.
Yeah, we were talking about this. I think they're going with the sex change theory. Is that not what we're titling it as?
I think so. That is correct. So even though Matthew himself doesn't buy into the theory, and I could say that I didn't buy into the theory, but now after tonight's episode, I might be kind of coming around to this. But the idea here is that Red was telling the truth when he said that he is not Lizzie's dad, but he's actually Lizzie's mom. And here's how Matthew kind of puts the pieces together for us. So they remark that in the plastic surgeon episode, I believe it was General Ludd, the plastic surgeon made a remark about the work and how it was awesome, and that all implied that Rec maybe had a sex change. So when he answers Liz in Ansel Garrick Part 2 that says, no, he's not the father, he might be actually telling the truth. And if you take that a step further, then Luli, when they get introduced to Red and Wrestler, I believe it was in episode 2 in Wu Jing, Luli comes up, kisses Red, and then Red turns to Wrestler and says, "Don't get your hopes up, Wrestler. She hates men, especially cops." So the suggestion, of course, is that Luli kisses Red because Red's really a woman.
Yeah, I don't know. I think anything is possible in this show, but I think this is really stretching it to the extreme. But I hope I don't come back with egg on my face on this one when things all wrap up later this year. But I'm just not buying into this one. It just seems too far-fetched for me.
Well, and another thing to think about is that mothers always protect their children, right? Come hell or high water. And then if you also go back to our TV Talk intro episode, kind of our preview before the season started, and you know anything about John Bokenkamp and the fact that he likes to write strong female-led characters, I wonder if this kind of ties into this theory that where Lizzie is a female character, Red's really the lead, and in this case, could lead really be female in the end in Bokenkamp's mind.
Yeah, again, I mean, it's really hard, and we'll get into what happened in tonight's episode a little further down. But, when we were talking about this earlier, it seemed really far off, but then you add what happened in tonight's episode, and it doesn't seem completely implausible. I mean, it really doesn't. So, but I'll tell you what, would that not be a mind blower to find out that that's actually true?
Well, and that's what I thought. I was trying to sit back and look at tonight's episode from a different angle, but I couldn't help but now have this theory in the back of my mind and then watch the episode tonight going, that kind of fits. That kind of fits.
I know it's kind of scary.
Yeah, no, I can't unsee it now, and I think I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Well, we'll all find out together. We'll sift through all these episodes as they occur, and this is something certainly we can reference from this point forward.
And if not, it'll be a nice 5-week Olympic break to kind of figure out if we're right or wrong. So you could all call us egg on our face when we all come back after the Olympics. But, you know, we all thought this was going to be about baby snatching this evening from this Cyprus Agency, and turns out it's completely different than we thought.
Yeah, this was a really great episode. I don't know who's coming up with these story ideas, but this was a particularly compelling one tonight, I thought. And it opened up, of course, with just this lady kind of wrapped in a blanket wandering up and down the street. A police officer sees her, and she's kind of mumbling, "They have my baby. They took my baby." It was kind of unsettling.
Yeah, and the one thing that I felt they may have failed on in this episode. The episode is fantastic. I mean, I rewound it a couple times during the course of the show just to get all the nuggets that were in there tonight. But they really didn't explain how this one woman ended up escaping. You know, they said they lost one. They had to get this replacement for her, which is the lady we end up finding on the college campus. But they never really explained how she escaped or why she escaped. Do you think, you know, it's an aversion to the drugs they were using, or something else?
I don't know. I don't know if she came, if she came out of the drugs. It all plays an important part. And I don't know if they just didn't feel the need to go there, and tell us, but it's certainly the driving point of the story. Because, if that lady doesn't escape, the rest of the story doesn't unfold. And I found it interesting too, how they tied it into what was going on in Tom and Lizzie's life at the same time. As this is about baby stealing, Tom and Lizzie are, of course, getting ready to adopt the surrogate baby.
Yeah, so I mean, you have two schools of thought on the surrogate baby, right? It could either be, was this baby, kind of implanted or farmed, if you will, if we want to use the farming word. It just sounds so crude and crass.
It really does.
But I mean, that's exactly what was happening, right? And so, number one, they're afraid because they might be getting one of these children, but secretively more fearful is that they're getting one of Owen Mallory's kids, because he ends up being the father of all of them.
Yeah, which was really quite a stunner when we get to that point, and we'll talk about that a little later in the episode, because that's actually one of the best lines in the tonight's episode between Liz and Owen. Before we get there, we meet up with Liz and Tom. They're doing the baby thing. They're looking at the 3D ultrasound image, and I kind of found that whole scene just kind of a little bit corny with the whole honey-do list and all that. I was kind of like, really? Come on, give me a break.
Now, you have to correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe the listeners can give us a talk back on this as well, but I thought they were adopting a girl, and I swear she said, she used the pronoun him in that conversation. Maybe it was a continuity error, or maybe the original girl they were going to get, they weren't able to because of Tom getting stabbed, in that first episode, so now they're getting a boy, but I swear she said him in that first opening sequence.
I didn't pick up on that. I didn't even notice that, but that would be interesting if that's the case.
So you can just use that talkback button in the center of the app. You don't have to answer the talkback question with it. Just give us any theory that you might have. If you think that they were supposed to be adopting a girl too, let us know. Or if we missed something and they are adopting a boy, then bygones, we'll move on.
But of course, as always with this show, Red has to weigh in. It's not long before him and Lizzie are having a little meeting in a church. He's offering up his advice on the whole adoption issue, which leads to him bringing the Cyprus Agency to Liz. Which,
of course, brings our radar up full circle, right? Because now you're thinking, okay, well, we know that Sam was watching, Lizzie, so was Sam getting Lizzie from this adoption agency? Or was this some other play, with, of course, Lizzie and Tom's potential baby? So already on heightened awareness, and we're only 10 minutes in at this point.
It doesn't seem to be lost on Liz that, with the adoption going on in her personal life, that he brings an adoption baby case to her. He has a great little line there. He has a lot of great little lines, but the little line of life is full of lovely little ironies. Just the way he said it was just absolutely awesome. This leads Lizzie and Wrestler off to the business of this Dr. Owen Mallory, who runs the Cyprus Agency. And he seems very cooperative on the surface.
Yeah, because I think what we end up finding out is that the Owen portion of the Cyprus Agency is really just the brokerage department. And there's actually more to this going on behind the scenes because he's not a fertility doctor at the end of the day. He's truly just a businessman.
Right, exactly. And this thing ends up going much deeper than I think anybody could have thought. Blacklist always has that big shocking scene, and they showed it in the teaser for the commercial all week too, where she confronts the lawyer on the sidewalk outside the restaurant, and he just steps in front of a bus, kind of takes himself out.
And he said something right before the bus hit him that I was trying to pick up on, of course, because as he gets hit, it gets muffled in the crash. But it was like, the two things you have to do to protect the agency, and then bang, the bus hits him. And so it was like two things. Well, that's kind of interesting because now we know towards the end of the episode what those two things might be.
Exactly. We move on to a kind of a separate side storyline. If you remember right at the end of last week, found out that Mira was the mole. We meet up with Red as he's walking into a warehouse, and he runs into this older gentleman that's carrying around an oxygen tank. He calls him Mr. Brimley, Teddy Brimley. Turns out that he's been in there interrogating Mira. Yeah,
and for some reason, she doesn't look all that bad, so maybe Mr. Brimley's not the best interrogator at the end of the day, because she still looks like she has, most of her facial features and all of her fingers and all of her toes.
Yeah, but he does tell Red as he's leaving that she's the real deal. She ain't lying. That basically she can be trusted.
So Mira's not the mole. So if she's not the mole, then who is the mole? And I think that's where Mira knows that she has some power in this conversation. And of course enlists Red to say, hey, let's be teammates.
Exactly. And then we kind of move back away from there, and now we're back at the Cyprus Agency, where the FBI has shown up with some subpoenas, and they're taking all the computers and all the records. They're digging deep. They're looking for what this agency's all about.
And it's amazing what this show can do, because we had a couple weeks ago, the whole, he's killing everybody that had the same abuse symptoms as the mother did to the child. And so he's like going after the abuser and then doing the exact same thing to him. So it's kind of the same motive here this evening, right? Because we find out that it's not the DNA of the kids that's really the key. It's the DNA of the moms that's the kid. So it's using the child to find the actual victim.
Right, and it's really kind of fun to watch them piece it together this time. It was actually kind of a surprise to me, because you would assume that the DNA of the kids would be, but they all come up with nothing. They couldn't trace that DNA anywhere. But what they did find out, and again, this was thanks to Red's help. He said, you got to dig deeper. You FBI, you always want to just look on the surface, and kind of steers Liz in the right direction. They get 5 hits when they look at it Red's way.
Exactly. But I think the biggest thing that happened in tonight's episode that was really interesting for me was that once they finally started putting this together and then backtrailing Owen's past to find out that he was actually, basically sitting there in the foster care system. And as they're talking with that nice elderly couple, they basically said that, it was our fault because our marriage was in a troubled place and they weren't ready for a baby. And so by having that conversation, I think that's total, foreshadowing for, of course, the conversation that Tom and Liz have towards the end of the episode.
Oh, yeah, very much so. I mean, you can see the recognition on Liz's face. I mean, she, that just hits her deep in the soul. You can just tell. I mean, she really takes that to heart.
So I think the real fun part, though, is trying to find out how much fun Red would be if he was actually taking some kind of drugs and hanging out with you just as your good old buddy, because I think the biggest shock for this episode was finding out that the mothers haven't been standing upright when they finally do find this one lady who got away, and then to find out that it's this hydroxapam that's basically keeping them in a coma, and then figuring out that the coma was because this drug dealer basically says that nobody wants this stuff because it'll keep you asleep for over 100 hours.
Right, yeah, in typical Red fashion, of course, he knows the man to go to, and it turns out that it's just this kind of young guy, almost a kid, having a big party at his house. But it turns out that he is like basically the East Coast drug connection. He's able to look this stuff up, and he can actually tell them who's gotten prescriptions of it, in the last 6 months. And it turns out that there's one person that happens to own a fertility clinic that had just recently had an order filled. So naturally, it leads them, like, takes Liz and Wrestler right to his office.
And these are the kind of tiny things that will debunk this, sex change theory, because as he's talking to Red, obviously, if Red had the sex change, we have to go back and find out when he had the work done with the plastic surgeon, because this drug dealer said, hadn't seen him within 2 years. So we have to try to put this timeline in as to who knows Red when, in order to find out if there might have been the potential sex change for this theory to hold water.
Right. I mean, it really would. I mean, that'd almost be a whole different backstory they'd have to build. You know what I mean? Because it would be the equivalent of having 2 different lives for him. Interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So then as we move forward through the episode, we get more and more information from Mira on who this mole might be. She breaks in, she gets the key card so that she can access the classified document. And the classified document basically says that, we're going to put in a new security system. So contact the good old GSA, maybe buy it from your local provider, but they need some schematics. So somebody obviously sanctions the release of this secure classified document for the schematics. And we find out later who that person is.
Yeah, we don't find that out till the very end, but she's able to steal the documents in actually a very intense scene where she's trying to return the card back to Harold's briefcase, and he's in the office and she doesn't know it. But that really kind of all seemed to go nowhere. She's able to return the card, and as far as we know, got away with this information unscathed.
And the acting there is really great, because the entire time it makes you feel like, okay, so I know this document was sanctioned. So the only person that could have sanctioned this document in the back of your mind is Harold. So he's talking to her like, I know what you're doing. And then he's like, in the end, I hope your kid feels better.
Yeah, exactly. So it's good. Just really build up a lot of kind of false suspense. She of course is going to turn these documents over to Red to do what it is that Red does. But that kind of leads us to the end scene of the whole show. Before we get there, we go to another abduction. They're able to piece together in what we like to call our famous Blacklist style. They're able to figure out who the next abduction is going to be.
And then with that, they chase it all the way down to the Galena Fertility Clinic, where they're basically going to find the doctor. And I don't know about you, but I was like, come on, wrestler, you shot the doctor. It's like, we got to get some info out of this guy.
Exactly. And he shot like a freaking propane tank or so. What was that? It was like an oxygen tank. I'm like, oh my God, it's going to blow up and kill everybody.
Yeah. And I was surprised it didn't blow up actually initially when he shot it, but maybe it was just, the puncture, and then it was just, the oxygen coming out. So no big deal. But they basically, break all this down. They save, 22 victims. They're all still alive, except for the one that got away. And then the interesting conversation was right as that was tailing off was some of this study is just amazing, and it goes back for years. So now everybody's having is years like 5? Is years like 30?
Exactly.
Because the first thing that came into my mind, of course, was, holy crap, Lizzie's one of these kids.
Yeah, and that was a really creepy scene. The whole scene where Liz, she kind of stumbles upon, like I said, I hate to use the word farm, but that's really kind of what it is. It's just these rows and rows of comatose pregnant women, and that they're just basically harvesting these babies from. It was really a disturbing sight.
Yeah, and even more disturbing that you find out then that, of course, Owen himself ends up being the father for all of these children, and his legacy is intact. What a great way to deliver that line, and the look on Lizzie's face of just horror, like, oh my gosh, they allowed you to procreate.
You're exactly. Crazy. And it's good the way they did it, because you really don't have any knowledge of that beforehand. But when she's interrogating him, that's exactly what he says. He says, my legacy is complete, and there's nothing you can do to change that. You know when he says that all the kids are his. And then your next thought is, oh my gosh, is Lizzie?
Right. Which then goes back to the sex change theory of, okay, if Lizzie's one of these kids, then Red's right. Owen Mallory's the father, which makes Red not the father. So the mother could be a potential answer, or like we said, a creepy uncle or what have you. But yeah, now it's like, well, could this fit into that theory? I don't know.
She saves all these women and everything's going to be okay. At the end of the day, she realizes she can't go through with this adoption, and she confronts Tom and tells him as much.
Seeing what's been happening with these adopted kids, I mean, obviously it rattles her. She knows that there's something wrong between her and Tom. She almost has more of like, instead of we can't go through with the adoption, she almost starts the divorce conversation. Like there's just something broken with us.
Yeah, she does. Yeah, she says it's us. She goes, we're not ready. It's us. Something's not right with us.
Which, of course, drives Tom right back into Jolene, a.k.a. we think Lucy Brooks's hands, of course, if you're pissed off at your wife, the first thing you're supposed to do is run to your mistress.
Right. And that's the only time we see Lucy this episode. It's just very quick. It's while some music's playing and you just see her and Tom sitting in a car talking, actually. Nothing really nefarious going on. Kind of they seem to be discussing what's been going on.
But then you have the two kind of intricate scenes or, intimate scenes, if you will, towards the end, where, of course, we do find out that Diane was the one who actually released this purchase order to get the security camera, and she becomes the mole. But she's doing it, she says, for Red's protection because she knows what happened to his family. And I think that the greatest line of all was when Red was sitting across from her and says, Fitch and I have an agreement. I do things my way. He does things his way. Diane, you and I, we don't have an agreement.
It's great.
And
that was a great reveal because you knew that scene opened up with just Red sitting in a darkened room with music playing. You knew you were going to find out who the mole was. You just didn't know when the light came on. You didn't know who was going to be standing there. When it was that Diane, it's like, ha. It was like a watershed moment. It was great. Their barbed comments back and forth to each other. She felt totally safe. She felt that Red could not hurt her. And boy, was she wrong.
And then, of course, the tidbit of, well, if you know Diane, then somebody else knows too, which implies, of course, that he's been having people watch Diane or watch a couple people to piece the information together. So, of course, she's collateral damage. Don't need her anymore. She's taken out of the picture as we listen to Gordon Lightfoot's Sundown as he leaves the apartment.
Yeah, and he's back to kind of vengeful Red here. I mean, he doesn't just shoot her. I mean, one shot to the head would do the trick. He empties a clip into this woman and doesn't really seem too remorseful about the fact that he had done so. And then kind of the final surprise of the night, the return of Mr. Kaplan.
And that's the key that I've been toying with in my head the entire episode, waiting to get to this point, because we know that it's a woman. So why is Red calling her Mr. Kaplan? And then they kind of walk by each other, and she delivers a great line. She's like, "Oh, don't worry about it. I'm don't worry about it, dearie. I'm used to cleaning up after you. I'm used to cleaning up all of your messes." She uses the word dearie. And then they kind of hold hands like they were passing a $5 or $20 or something like you tip a bellman, and they give each other a little kiss on the cheek. So of course this got me thinking again of, is Mr. Kaplan really a Mr. and Red is really the Mrs. And maybe these were the two parents that were supposed to adopt Lizzie from Owen, and they never ended up getting the adoption to go through or something. So I don't know. Now I have more questions and more confused than ever.
Yeah. But that's what makes it so fun. That's what makes it so great. Whatever this network that Red has, it's very close knit. I don't know. I'm hoping that one day soon we'll all kind of get in on what the whole thing is, but not too soon.
Not too soon. Still got 9 episodes to go for this season, and of course, season 2 has already been picked up. So our talkback question for tonight is, of course, around this adoption decision. So how do you all feel about Liz's decision not to continue the adoption process? And we remind you that the show is not done yet, because answers to this talkback question, how do you feel about Liz's decision not to continue the adoption process? Those answers are coming up next in the talkback clips. But you're going to need the free TV Talk app in order to hear them. So go on out to tvtalkapp.com, download that app today for iOS and Android to get the full TV Talk experience.
And while you're online doing that, make sure you head on over to tvtalk.com/win, and you can be entered in our weekly prize drawing, and as well share with all your friends on Twitter and Facebook that you listen to TV Talk, but more importantly, TV Talk, the Blacklist.
We hope you join us again next time as we continue the journey with, we believe, number 99, The Katana, when the show resumes February 24th after the Olympics. Until then, I'm Troy.
And I'm Dave, wishing enjoyment of the Winter Olympics upon everyone who stays off
the Blacklist.
And now it's time for this week's Talkback Clips.
We hope you enjoyed this special version of The Blacklist Exposed, previously aired on the TV Talk Network and used with permission. Until next time, I'm Agent Troy Heinrichs. That's at Troy Heinrichs on Twitter. And if you want to learn more about me, just visit, about.me/Troy Heinrichs.
And I'm Agent Aaron Peterson. You can hear me talking about movies and TV on the Hollywood Outsider podcast, as well as Remake This Movie Right. We are available at thehollywoodoutsider.com or on Twitter at H_outsider. Be sure to subscribe, download the app, submit your feedback, but most importantly, keep yourself off of the Blacklist.
The Blacklist Exposed is a Golden Spiral Media production. Find more of our great podcasts at goldenspiralmedia.com/podcasts.